with Christoph to talk you through a few of our trends and themes that we're looking at. So I'm going to be looking at the economy and also technology, and then straight after that, Christoph's going to be talking about the world of feminism. So we're looking very long term here. So the economy. Ooh, let me just check that's working. Yep. Oh, there we go. So, in early 2014, the prospects were looking better and certainly calmer than they were in 2013. But then at the end of last year, we started to see geopolitical instability, and that started to frighten markets. And then we had the Eurozone fears. Oil prices started to fall. We had the Chinese economy slow down. And there are lots of serious questions here. Meanwhile, the UK hasn't been doing so badly. Our unemployment's been falling, and our wage increases have actually been higher than inflation for the first time in 5 years. But today I'm going to be looking slightly more long-term. I'm going to be focusing on 3 long-term trends that are going to affect the consumer in the UK going forwards. These are very important for all consumers, UK and global. So Depop is all about the technological unemployment, the pressure that machines and algorithms were placing on labour markets going forwards. Here are a few examples. We have Clearwell, which has natural language analysis, and it's able to analyse documents and save time on, say, legal fees, substantially cutting costs. Drones are already being used in military all over the world and increasingly have commercial implications. We know that Amazon are looking at the world of drones, so there's some very interesting implications there. Then we have IBM Watson's computer, and this is being used in medical diagnostics. So looking at thousands of cancer patients' records, trying to diagnose cancer. And then finally we have, as an example here of something that's happening at the moment, is Athens Tug, which is a robotic hospital porter. And what we see here is that machines are advancing from rule and routine-based tasks into things that are much more advanced, using data and documents and doing more manual tasks for us. The implications in the labour markets are bound to be important. But maybe you think this is just something that we've heard before. We've always gone against technology when it's come our way. An example here would be in 1811, when handloom weavers, they revolted against the new machinery. They were the Luddites, the Luddite Revolution. And we've always responded in this way. So what's new this time? Well, there's a sheer pace of change that's changed dramatically. We've never had a level of change so fast. Back in 1811, we needed people to produce the machines. In this situation, we don't need that. Robots can make robots. So where do humans fit in? And then we have the idea of the logistical and analytical tasks that don't need to be done by humans anymore. Potentially, technology can do this. So are we moving towards a new phase in the labour markets? Potentially, yes. And there are 8 questions that we really have to think about when we think about Depop and technology taking over our jobs in the very long term. There's the destruction question. What jobs will be destroyed? What jobs will remain? We expect clerical roles, time-consuming analysis, like my job, and then transportation in particular will be areas that will decline the need for the population to be involved in processes. Then we've got the transition question. So if we're moving into new jobs, what are these jobs going to be? Are they going to require creativity, charisma, and artistic abilities? Will we be comedians, dare I say it, magicians? Whatever the machines can't do more efficiently, that's what we suspect will happen. And then if there's pressure on employment, what will happen to our wages? Will there be downward pressure on our wages that maybe trade unions can't do anything about? We have the career question. Our career paths could take very different routes. Starting off in one industry now, there might be serious implications there for what I might be doing in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, and same with everyone out here too. We'll need to be far more flexible as a human labour force. We have the distributional question. We know that machines mean productivity, and productivity means growth. But who's going to have that growth? Who's going to have that capital? We expect this could have serious implications in terms of the levels of inequality we see in society. Then there's the political question. Maybe the governments will need to respond here, protecting the jobs of those in society where their employment has been superseded by technology. Maybe they'll need to start providing lifelong learning where people's skills that they learn earlier on in life won't be applicable anymore. And this is my favourite. Potentially, we all might have to work less. Maybe there'll be less work, we'll all just decide to work part-time, and we'll have much more enjoyment of our work and leisure. And then last of all, there's the human question. Will the goods that are produced by real people and services delivered by real people have a premium proposition? Will they be the luxury? Or will it become part of CSR for companies? Our next trend is the slow growth model. And this is something that the head of the IMF warned about late last year, and the risk of the new mediocre. This is the fall in long-term growth rates, and is particularly applicable to advanced markets. So in this scenario, the recent economic crisis, alongside an aging society, has pushed down the long-term potential growth across Europe. And the worst scenario is secular stagnation. And in this case, long-term growth is effectively zero in a long-term manner. That sounds pretty depressing. And is it possible? Well, yes, it has. It's happened before. In Japan, there was a crisis about 25 years ago in terms of their economy. And it's barely grown since. The stock market and house prices are still far below their pre-crash levels. And it's a worrying parallel for Europe in terms of deflation. Japan's long-term inflation rate is exactly zero. And this is one of the biggest reasons that the economy has stagnated for a whole generation. So could this happen in Europe too? Well, looking at the central forecasts that we have compared to pre-crisis levels, we're definitely going towards something that looks more like the new mediocre overall. However, Italy, it does look like there could be concerns there around secular stagnation. But the key threat here is deflation. If deflation occurs, these situations are far more likely. The third trend here is wealth multipolarity. We often talk about wealth polarization when we look at just one country, but on a global level, it's actually far more complicated. And there are three main dimensions of wealth distribution to discover here. And there's plenty of evidence that global wealth is being concentrated more and more at the top end of the wealth distribution. Recently, Oxfam produced a report suggesting that the richest 1% own more than the rest of the world combined. But we can also see a pattern of falling inequality overall if we're looking at the global middle classes. Many emerging markets are high-growth markets where the global middle class is expanding fast and compositions are shifting. But back in the UK, we are seeing that actually inequality has grown substantially since the 70s. Both income and wealth have become more polarized over time, and although it's stabilized recently, it's been at its highest levels ever. And then the main recent debate has been about wealth rather than income. As you can see here, wealth is far more polarized than income. And according to Thomas Piketty's book, Capital in the 21st Century, this argues that the long-run trend is for the rate of return on capital to exceed the rate of economic growth. So this means that the wealth is likely to grow far faster than incomes. And in a world where we have slow growth, that's going to be even more salient. And even more than that, this trend of wealth inequality tends to benefit the older generations who have large amounts of assets and wealth. Several countries have protected pensioners alongside this in austerity cuts. As we can see here, the disposable income of retired individuals has grown far more than those in non-retired households over the past 30 years. So considering our population is aging as well, it looks as though we can only expect generational inequalities to continue going forwards. And what does this mean in terms of our political landscape? With the anti-austerity party Syriza taking an effective majority in Greece earlier this week, we have to consider power to the people in all of this. Certainly there's potential to cause shockwaves across Europe. Particularly Spain is another area that we should consider with the Podemos party in the next coming months. And where we see discontent in younger consumers compared to wealthy older citizens, we have to consider what could happen here. In the UK, the UKIPs and the Greens have never had it so good in the polls, which were brought up earlier. And we never can know for certain what's going to happen here. Possibly in the short term, there might be a hung parliament. But overall, we expect a more polarised outlook going forwards. So hopefully those three trends in the economy are something that you'll be able to think about going forwards today and consider the impact long, medium, perhaps not so short term, but certainly there are strong implications there. The next session I'm going to look at for you is peak hype. This is a technology story, and we've seen loads of technology stories over the past year. We've had drones causing riots at football matches, we've had Google Glass addictions and selfie addictions. But there's one tech story that's made the most noise recently. And in just a few short months, you'll be able to get your hands on Apple's recently announced watch. And you know something's big when Apple weighs in. There's a great sense of inevitability. Available in 2015 is what they say. Build it and they will come. And there is a sense that we really are ready. Back in 2010, most of us were using a fairly dumb phone, eager to see how smartphones would change the landscape. If we fast forward a few years, then we'll see that smartphones have basically reached saturation point here, with the feeling that almost everyone that wants to buy a smartphone has probably got one already. Smartphones have changed our lives enormously. It's a media device, it's a social device, it's a device that tells us where we are and who's around us. The smartphone has become our portkey to other worlds, and it's only been in our pockets for about 5 years. So in terms of purchasing in tech, we know that tech purchase is growing fast in the UK. Our tech future looks very rosy, and actually our forecasts show that by 2025 we're going to be buying twice as much technology. I'm not talking here about twice as much money. These are the growth rates in actual physical quantities. We're going to be buying twice as many technology items, even here in mature Britain. So we're buying more tech going forwards, but how many of us are buying into wearables? Well, currently it's very small. The last time we surveyed, early in 2014, about 7% were using wearables, but a much higher 27% were interested. And we expect by our next research wave early this year that these figures will be at least 10% higher. I know what you're thinking though, that's still a minority of consumers. That's hardly the levels of smartphone ownership. Well, let's go back to 2008, when we asked people if they agree, all I want a mobile phone for is calls and messaging. And back then, a massive 81% agreed with that statement. This is the year after the first iPhone was launched, and we basically turned our noses up at it. But look at us now, we're addicted. We're more ready than we think for new technologies. And we're also interested in what technology can do for us. We're interested in services built around a personal data tracking, or what we like to call biometrics. 39% of UK consumers tell us they're interested in devices that would suggest ideas to help them improve their daily lives. And I've got the 16 to 24 comparison here, which is about 64%. And then around a third of our consumers say that they'd be interested in a playlist that changes based on their mood. That's what we like to call biometric media. And the overlap here is the proportion interested in both of these. So you can see that just under half of Brits are interested in using their personal data for one reason or another, and a massive 3/4 of 16 to 24s. And this would be the kind of device you might use to deliver these services. 50 Cent has started a rap battle with Dr. Dre in the world of earphones. These are 50 Cent's earphones, and they measure your heart rate through your ears. And we're seeing this kind of gear cropping up all over the world, from sports gear in Spain, baby monitors in Chile and China. The world is ready for biometrics. So this is the hype. And people like Future Foundation go on about these technologies, and then Apple will go and build them, and then we'll all go out and buy them. And now we're looking at a revolution in wearables. Is this prominence in tech in our lives just going to keep rising and rising? In some ways, yes, but it is more complicated than that. The first reason is our desire for control. It's a theme that runs through many of our trends at Future Foundation, the desire to maximize on every moment in an effortless way. Consumers' life in finely tuned cruise control. So, on the one hand, control might look like using Apple Pay, using biometrics to securely make payments and feel in control of your finances. But it might also mean using a pen in a completely natural way and then knowing that it's actually stored somewhere on the cloud. Look closer and it's more smart than it seems. But we don't just want control, we also want quiet. There's a great number that agree that they check their phone more often than they would like to. And there's a huge psychological impact of owning a device so powerful and connected as a smartphone. I'm sure everyone here will have reached into their phone expecting a call to find that nothing was there. It's very strong. So there are moments when we want more peace and quiet, and there are moments when we want more control. And we like to think that when we have tech, it will look something like this. Here we go. We are still searching for better ways to connect, and this could be it. This is Covert's design ring, and it's effectively a ring that's designed for women, as many wearables aren't. And this is a ring that can be worn to give you notifications from your phone, but only the notifications that you want to know. So maybe a call from an important loved one, but not a notification about some PPPI insurance claims. The idea is that you still have your smartphone, but you have control, and you have the power to create moments of quiet when they're needed. So going back to the big question, the peak, it's clear that some things already are peaking. So things like passwords, PIN numbers, constantly checking your phone for notifications. And we're confident we're going to see less of these going forwards. This is what we call the tech graveyard. But that doesn't contradict the trajectory we showed earlier, the hype, the picture of tech playing greater roles in all of our lives. Both of these lines are real, but at different moments. And it means that we have the power to change from hyperconnectivity to escapism. The gap between these two lines widens, so does the choice. 1 minute you can be flying through the cloud, the next you're on aeroplane mode. So what does this mean? This gap that we see, how are we filling this? Well, the first thing to say is messages are no longer simply read or unread. Say you get a vibrate notification on your smartwatch while you're at work. It's from a loved one, so you delay the message. As you leave work, you read it on your phone and you realize that there's a link to a video, so you delay it further so you can watch it on your TV. When you go home, it recognizes you walked in the door and you can finally watch that cat video in glorious 4K. Content is consumed in its optimum situation, and this is what we call the continuum. It's something that we have in our Trending 2015 decks, which anyone here can request from us and we'll be able to send those to you. And it's interesting and it's important, and it has huge implications for anyone that deals with communications, social channels, content, and advertising. And this shows that consumers now have an internal filing system. Information comes in and it gets tagged as now, never, or later. And Google is currently testing these ideas with an email inbox that gets sorted by importance, exactly with this principle. And then thanks to apps like Tinder, consumers all over the world are able to dismiss whatever comes their way. In a recent iOS Apple update, they changed the swipe direction of delete from right to left. Dismissing now has an international default. Swiping is the new no thanks. And then finally, we come back to control. And there's a clear link between wearables and control in our research. We find for each of these things that you want to control on the right, you're 5% more likely to be interested in buying wearables. Tech is a self-management tool, and tech is part of the perfect you. So this is what the future looks like. Hype, yes. The peak, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter whether your consumers have got Apple Watches or they're still using a Nokia. They'll still be balancing the desire for the new with the urge to control and that yearning for peace and quiet under everything else. And in the future, that balancing act becomes all the more important as we gain power to change our exposure to the digital world day by day, second by second. So, this is the consumer we're talking to, They're alert, yet indifferent. They're switched on, and they're dismissive. And treading a path between these contradictions is an imperative for the tech of the future, but it's a route that we all need to find. Thank you.